Asus Zephyrus G15 is a stunning laptop. This one offers a Ryzen 9 5900HS, an RTX 3080, 32GB of RAM, and a 1440p 165Hz IPS level panel, all in a pretty slim and light chassis. But I wouldn't buy one, at least not this model. Let me run you through why. But first, a message from this video sponsor, Edifier. Their NeoBuds Pro are the first high-res certified true wireless earbuds, offering high-quality sound with punchy bass and touching treble, all in a compact and portable design. They also offer active noise cancellation for a truly isolated experience if that's what you're after, and Edifier have launched them on Indiegogo for just $99, so if you want to pick up a pair yourself or check them out, there's a link to them in the description below. Now we have to start with that monster spec. The AMD CPU, the Ryzen 5900HS, is an 8-core 16-thread chip with boost clocks up to 4.5 GHz. Now this seems to be the 45W TDP model, as in the performance mode, that's how much power it draws. You can up that to 65 watts using the turbo mode in Asus's Armoury Crate software, but what's funny is that 65 watts is pretty much exactly how much power Intel's what I call fake i7, the 11370H quad-core, draws, and yet this has double the cores and double the horsepower. Now speaking of horsepower, this thing monsters through productivity tasks. Starting with Cinebench and the single-threaded scores, in turbo mode the G15 sprints to the top of my charts, even beating out the 5900HX in the Zephyrus Duo by about 3 points. In performance mode, it's only 5 points down, so it's clearly a strong chip. In multi-threaded, the HX really starts to stretch its legs compared to the HS in the G15, where even in turbo mode, the G15 peaks at 4700 points versus over 5300 in the Duo. It does trade blows to the 5980HS in the Flow X13 though, which is pretty interesting to see. In Blender and the BMW scene, the slightly thicker Strix G15 with its 5800H actually performs a little better, which is explained by its 65W TDP base and 80W turbo mode versus the 45 and 65W TDPs that the Zephyrus G15 has by comparison. The 5900HS still offers incredibly strong performance, even beating out Intel's last gen top of the line chip, the 10980HK, and in the Gooseberry scene, the 5900HS takes the lead from all bar the 5900HX, even beating out the 5800H. Lastly, in the Puget Bench suite for the Adobe CC apps, it shows a strong lead over the 5980HS in the Flow X13. You do also get a reasonable score bump by using the turbo mode over the standard performance one, even if the fan noise is increased a fair bit. Now, you might be thinking, why am I spending so long talking about CPU and productivity benchmarks for a gaming laptop? Well, that's because Asus reckons the sort of people who buy this machine want to game, create, and beyond. Which is also why they included 32GB of 3200MHz DDR4 memory in this, and yes, it is 1x8, although that's the only upgradable module, as the other 16GB are soldered onto the board and are not user upgradable. They've also fitted it with one of the best panels that I've possibly ever seen on a laptop, maybe barring the OLEDs that you can get on Razer's Blade laptops instead. Either way, this is a 1440p 165Hz IPS level panel with, and you might not believe this, true 100% coverage of the DCI-P3 spectrum. Yes, I verified that with my Spider X. It is absolutely on point, and it comes very well calibrated out of the factory, so this is very well suited for both gaming and content creation. And on top of that, it's immensely fast. I'm reading black to white response times about 3 milliseconds, which is incredible, and well, yes, slightly slower white to black times about 10. When you look at the UFO test for ghosting, there's next to none there. Sure, there might be 1 or 2 copies, and it does take about 3 milliseconds for the frame to transition, but considering this is refreshing at 165 Hz, or about once every 6 milliseconds, that means that you have 3 milliseconds of your frame perfectly, crisply displayed on screen. Again, sure, a very good OLED might not have this problem, but again, for an LCD, this is possibly the best I've seen in a long time. And actually, even the input lag times are pretty phenomenal. NVIDIA's LDAT tool captured an average of 33 milliseconds of total system or click-to-photon latency, which across the 20 shots was pretty consistent and is one of the best results that I've seen from a laptop, and actually beats out a lot of the slower desktop monitors that I've tested as well. To say that I'm impressed with this panel is a complete understatement. So why don't I like this model then? It all comes down to the GPU, an RTX 3080. And I need to make it clear, since Asus themselves don't make this clear on the damn landing page for this laptop, this 3080 that's in here is not the same as a desktop 3080 card. And not just because this is only an 80 watt TDP chip versus the 320 watt you get in a desktop card. More importantly, this isn't even the same core. This is based on the GA104 core design, which is the same as the desktop 3070, and only offers 6,144 CUDA cores versus 8,704 in a desktop 3080 card. This is an RTX 3080 laptop, and that's a very important distinction. But that's not what bothers me the most about this GPU and about this model. The problem is that this is the 80 watt TDP version of the 3080. But if you compare it to the 115 watt version of the 3070, well, turns out that that 3070 might actually be faster. Now, at the native 1440p resolution, the G15 and the 3080 do pretty well. At ultra settings, it does struggle a little, and if I was gaming on this myself, I would probably be turning those settings down a little bit, at least in games like Fortnite, and maybe even games like Cyberpunk, and of course, definitely in Microsoft Flight. But overall, you're gonna have a pretty decent experience, especially if you do turn them down ever so slightly. Only CSGO at the highest settings reaches or exceeds the 165 Hz refresh rate of the monitor, although I should add that this does have adaptive sync enabled, and so even when you are below that maximum refresh rates, you're still going to have a pretty reasonable and pretty nice experience. Here's the kicker though. In Cyberpunk, even with a more recent driver and an updated game, the Zephyrus G15 with its 80 watt 3080 is only on par with the 115 watt 3070 in the Strix G15 at 1080p. It does hold better 1% lows, but as I said, Cyberpunk has been updated since I last ran the Strix results, so that's quite a plausible reason. The performance gap between the 80 watt and 115 watt versions of the 3080 can be seen with the Zephyrus Duo. A full 10 FPS higher is a significant advantage going with that higher TDP version of the same chip. In Watch Dogs, the Strix G15 is again pretty much tied with the 3080 in the Zephyrus, with the Zephyrus Duo and the XG Mobile 3080 again storming ahead by 6 and 7 FPS respectively. As for Fortnite, I have to point out that this is the hardest game to directly compare numbers to when they haven't been run at the same time. Updates, and probably more importantly, exactly what you do in-game can drastically affect the average results that you get out at the end, where being inside versus outside in a gunfight versus building versus, just being somewhere else on the map, all of those things drastically affect the performance that you would see. And so take these results with a grain of salt, but however you look at it, the 3080 with its 80 watt TDP is one of the slowest chips in this lineup. that's kind of a big deal. There's, I think, 30% more performance to be had going with the Zephyrus Duo and the 115 watt version, and the 3070 with its 115 watt version is again still a good bit, I think 10 FPS faster. So it's not quite as fast as I would like, but why does that matter? It's still a great performer, you still have a great time playing on it, and it's still a pretty decent laptop overall. What's the big deal? Well, in short, the price. If you want to pick up this model with this spec, you're going to be parting ways with £2,600. That's insane. And bearing in mind that the Strix G15 with its 3070 with 115 watt TDP and a 300Hz display instead comes in at just £1,700 or £900 less, well, let's just say I know which one I would rather have. And that's a massive shame because the Zephyrus G15 is a fantastic laptop. It's really well built, it feels properly premium in the hands, the display is stunning, and as for a gaming experience, that's pretty great too. Even with that extra 32 gigs of RAM and the powerhouse of a CPU, you get a great editing experience if that's what you're interested in. The keyboard is fantastic. It's just the right balance of actuation or travel distance, actuation points, clickiness but not mushiness. It's fantastic and I very much enjoy using it. The trackpad's massive and works well. You have a decent I/O with I think 2 USB-A ports, 2 Type-Cs, HDMI, Ethernet, headphone jack, micro SD card reader, and DC in. It's a fantastic experience if it didn't cost so much. But there is some good news. If you want to buy this exact machine, minus a bit of RAM, a technically slightly slower but in reality pretty similar CPU, and an 80 watt version of the 3070 instead of the 3080, well, you can still get this package with this display for just £1,900 instead. Now, that's still not as good of a deal that you get with the Strix G15, which I have to remind you is a faster overall experience in terms of gaming. You have a 300Hz display, and it costs £200 less than even that even slower model. But if you want this thin and light chassis, you want this more premium build quality, this stunning display, and that's what's important to you, that would be the model I recommend. Now, with that said, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the Zephyrus G15 and the comparison to Asus's own models that are often better value both from straight up monetary and performance, but also is this slightly more premium thin and light chassis with a beautiful display worth the extra money for you? Feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Now, if you want to check out the Zephyrus G15 and see pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary, check out the top link in the description down below. That's an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see all that good stuff. And for good measure, I'll leave the Strix G15 link down there for you as well, so you can compare between the two where you are. Otherwise, that is pretty much it for this video. If you want to support the channel, there are a load of ways you can do that. Just by subscribing and turning that bell notification on is plenty, although if you want to support even further, there's the YouTube join button where you can get access to our Money Min Discord chat, sponsor-free videos, and some cool emotes to use in the comments and on our live streams. There's also Patreon if you want to get access to our Money Min Discord chat that way. There's merch hoodies or t-shirts like this one or a load of other cool designs, and there are other affiliate links in the description you can check out for places like Overclockers UK if you're buying from there, VPN options, Hubble Bundle, Streamlabs OBS, and a whole load of other stuff, so do feel free to check it out. Do check out the Strix G15 review on the end cards if you want to hear what I thought of that one. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in the next video.